The elder sibling.
Look,
Ooh.
how old
Ah.
are you? 84? Look 84 now.
Look, 84.
That do?
That was pretty good.
You look 82 now.
Yeah.
Oh,
Wait,
oh,
wait,
Doris,
wait.
that's that.
Ooh,
Doris,
82 looks like
that's the way
this.
people do look.
Ooh, didn't want that.
In rest
And
homes.
the rest is so sad.
Yeah,
Doris,
they don't
really.
have any teeth, though, do they?
Well, they lose their teeth. What's the sense of putting their teeth in, you know? As soon as they lose their eyeglasses. Like, Rose broke her eyeglasses.
Because she doesn't.
No, because she can't remember what she does read, if she reads.
Well, even if she could read.
Like,
Can she read?
Oh, yeah, she could read, but she
You're
doesn't
supposed to look-
comprehend at all.
You're supposed to look 56.
Oh, 56? I'm 56.
Yeah, that's nice.
56.
Yeah.
76.
76.
76. Isn't there a gasoline? 76
Oh, yeah.
gasoline? That's
Home.
What?
Hill.
After San Francisco and Navy and Art stayed pretty much in Omaha.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What went on, Lorraine, that summer?
Or the Navy. you mean.
That
Well, I
summer
joined the
that
Navy.
I broke my arm.
I
You broke your
arm.
I thought Jenny broke her
I didn't
arm.
break
and
mine.
me, I didn't break her.
See, my folks, my mother, I didn't know she was in California. You know? There she was, out at her big sister's house. And she wouldn't let her go back to Nebraska. So that's the way I understood it.
What was it?
My mother in 1937 was out visiting my big sister
Yeah.
in San Francisco. Big sister says, "You can't go back to Nebraska now."
Well,
I
Mother
didn't
didn't
really
want
say
to.
that. I didn't say that.
I remember when Dad got the letter, he read it out in the field, where the grasshoppers
It was Mother's
had
idea.
eaten the onions right out of the ground. The crops were zilch. There was nothing there.
It must have been a quick decision, you see,
Well, she said, you come out, you know.
because I
when they
left
come
there.
out.
What was it? I think my leave ahead was in August. Go back to Navy, and the next thing you know,
Yeah.
Well, you know, this had been brewing in Mother's and Dad's mind for years.
oh, you way
And
back.
then when Mother came out, she was real sociable little lady.
She
you know?
loved
She'd
San
go up in
Francisco.
the park, take Ted up there, and she met a lot of people and they were telling her how pretty Oregon was.
Well, even back when I was a kid there, he used to get these brochures,
Yeah.
Yeah.
farms, and
Well, didn't he and Rutledge go out to eastern Oregon
Yeah.
and check out the potato farms?
Yeah.
I know they did.
They did that one.
I wonder when they would have done that. Cause
Well,
That
not
was-
too long before
it was
Mother
when
came
I was
out.
gone, I wasn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was.
Was that Lorraine? Do you remember what year?
No.
Daughter, you know, he went out there.
He and Rutledge
Hud
and
Rob,
Dad.
wasn't it? They called him
Hud
Hud Rob.
Rob, yeah.
Good Rob, huh?
He went out and he stayed there.
Yeah, he probably became a millionaire. But I remember Dad wasn't really headed for Oregon, Doris, when
At
we
first
left.
it was,
Really?
no.
He was headed for San Francisco, California, wherever, you know,
Well,
there was
yeah,
opportunity.
California, and then Mother talked him into coming up to Oregon.
Well,
he
I
looked
don't think
around.
Mother did it. It
Well, he
was
went to
the
California.
opportunities. He looked around in California at
Yeah.
the vineyards in Napa Valley, of
and
all
he,
places.
somehow he
Yeah.
didn't like California
He
too.
just wasn't sure about the vineyards, you know.
You mean he looked before he went to San Francisco?
Yeah.
No,
No, while he
while
was
he
in
was
San
there.
Francisco. And Ginger, remember Ginger? They brought Ginger.
Lorraine, do you remember having Ginger in the car, even?
I
No.
remember we put her in a
No.
little storage room we had, and she chewed up stuff. She didn't like it in San Francisco at all.
Now, did the clutch go out on the way to, he was across Nevada
Yeah.
or somewhere?
In Reno, wasn't it, Lorraine?
The what?
Reno.
Probably.
We had to park the car, and luckily Dad,
Yeah, got up
Got
underneath there and took the clutch plate out and
Yeah.
took it in, and he was telling me he went to this wrecking yard. had to find another clutch plate because his car was way out of date, you know.
Yeah.
And they had one from a Dodge, and it had a little knob on it. And they said, well, we'll cut that knob off, and I think it'll work. So they cut
Luckily.
the knob off of this clutch plate and put it in, and that's the way you made it to San Francisco.
But in Oregon City, the car played out again, and that's why you stayed in Oregon City for the winter.
I don't think the car played out. It was, we looked and saw a sign that said apartments for rent.
No.
Wasn't that what it was, Lorraine?
I
It seems
thought it
like
was
it.
that the car just
No.
gave out.
No, because he had to have the car to go and check out. He was looking around, and then he saw that for $100 he could rent this 20, wasn't it 20 acres? With a farm there in
Wildwood.
Estacada.
How long did you stay in Oregon City?
Well, about 2 months.
What
You
did you,
went
I know
to
it was
school
2
there?
months.
what did you do?
Yeah, I
what
went.
did you live off of? And
Well, he lived off of whatever money he had, because he wasn't making any money then. But
He
then
had
he
a little
got
money when he came out, maybe
then-
$300, something like
well,
that.
I got a new blouse and a new skirt. I remember to go to high school in Oregon City.
Oh, how long did you go to high
2
school?
months. 2
Oh.
months.
And Lorraine was what grade?
Well, 4,
6, I guess.
6. Do
sixth
you
grade?
remember going to school there, Lorraine?
Yeah.
Then we had to. The Kolstad was the name of the people we rented from.
Oh, that's how we got acquainted with them. huh?
Yeah.
And
I
they
took
were
that
real good to you.
Yeah.
elevator up to this.
Yeah, the old elevator we took up, to the next level there and to go to the school.
Oh, you
And-
did every day to come
Oh
to
yeah,
school? Is that right?
sure. And I loved the school because I was had a new red blouse and a black and red plaid skirt.
Now this Estacada episode.
Well, then Dadsy found this farm to rent, this place, for $100 a year.
Had a
And-
nice
Gee.
house, all
Yeah.
furnished. The house is furnished.
I didn't
I
remember.
don't remember the
Yeah.
furnishing.
Well, then he went and got his own furniture the next summer. And that's when he brought out her bushes.
Yeah.
And the truck.
Well, we weren't living there at that house then, Doris. We were living in the dentist's house when he brought out the furniture. Because that's when he brought
Well,
the
isn't
piano.
that what the house you're talking about?
No, the house we lived in when Lorraine was
Well, I met Jack.
that
on that.
first house we lived in.
Well, I thought that was that Wildwood.
No, no.
I guess I didn't see that place at all.
It was up on the hill. It was an old farmhouse. It's
No.
still there.
Yeah.
It's still there.
It's
And we had
kinda-
the outhouse. We didn't have inside plumbing.
Why didn't you move to the 20 acres?
Well,
House.
the
Wildwood.
house had, Wildwood, we came later.
Oh.
The house where we lived, when we first left Oregon City, was the $100 a year house, and it had apple trees.
Lots
Trees.
of apple
I mean,
trees.
Lots
it's got
of apple
Estacada,
trees.
you mean?
Huh? In Estacada, yeah.
No.
When we first left Oregon City.
But we didn't. Did we stay there a year? We didn't.
Yeah.
Did we?
Uh-huh.
Well, now the way I remembered it anyway, see, I came up to visit you, and the first time I came up, you were living at Wildwood.
Yeah.
And I thought it was the year after you had been the summer after you had gone up to Oregon.
It was maybe in the fall, wasn't it? Or was it summer you
Could have been
visited?
fall.
Now this Wildwood, that was on the 20 acres that you're talking
No,
about?
Wildwood was in a different spot, and
A dentist,
it belonged to a dentist. And he had one building that said dentist across the front of it. And we heard that it was for rent, and Lorraine and I hoped that it would be for rent.
It was really nice.
A better
Yeah.
place?
Their name was
It
Hugh
Pretty.
We had
Hewitt.
inside plumbing and
Hewitt. was
Hewitt. The
place.
Hewitt place.
Yeah.
Lorraine.
And the ground went with it too?
They
It
had
was a
Had a prune dryer.
prune dryer, prune trees, filbert trees. Remember all the filberts? I can just see Mother cracking those filberts in
Oh.
the evening.
Did you?
and
able
it
to-
was furnished, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And
Was
then
you
Well, I don't know as it was furnished. Lorraine, do you? I don't remember any
able to
furniture.
make a living off of this, these farms that you
Well, he worked for Jippo Loggers.
Oh, as well.
Yeah, mainly. I mean, you didn't make much money on the farms.
I don't think he made anything. to speak of.
Oh, the prunes or the Filberts, he might have. I never thought about that. All I was interested in was the boys.
Did it have a good crop of boys?
Yeah. Well, there was the good, bad guys, and then there was good guys.
I got one of the good guys.
Lorraine, but then Mother was instrumental. She liked Jack a lot.
Oh.
You did.
But while we lived at that Wildwood, we had to catch the bus about a mile from where the house was, didn't we, Lorraine? Had to walk up to Palmatiers.
Oh, yeah.
And Jack would write a little note and put it under the rocks and for Lorraine.
No kidding. She still got those notes?
No, darn it.
Well,
In
then-
my heart.
In her heart. They
And
are.
Jack was out of the picture a little while, and when they moved to
Yeah, when we moved to Vernonia,
Vernonia.
We moved to Vernonia in 1940.
I hated
But
it.
see, now you weren't married then. You
No, I had just graduated from high school, and I was having so much fun jitterbugging, and swinging to the bands. And then we moved to Vernonia out in the country on a Saturday night. It was the most awful thing to sit out there on the porch and see the cars going by. It was terrible.
Terrible house too, wasn't it?
Oh, was there?
No water.
No, what? Oh, that was.
You had to go down to
It was
along
terrible.
the road
house.
to get
Along the
water.
road.
Ew.
Drinking water in a
and even
Spring.
water to wash your
How in
clothes.
the heck could we do it?
How did my mother do that?
And then in the behind was a creek with it. That's where you got your wash water,
Probably.
right?
I don't even remember that. Well, see, I didn't live there very long because I went to work then. Eileen Rutledge and her uncle Harold hitchhiked to Pendleton.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then when we came back,
What'd you do in Pendleton? Looking for work or something?
well, it was the Pendleton Roundup time. We had fun fooling around.
This is while you were in Estacada?
No, when we moved to Vernonia, life became terrible.
Mine too. I hated that.
Mother called
Vernonia
it the
High
old
School.
stump lands because it had been logged recently. See.
Well, some of it
hated
had been burned too. The stumps were.
It was horrible.
Black.
I hated it.
I remember it was. See, I visited while you was there.
Yeah, I remember you had old Dan. Well,
Yeah.
that was later. Yeah,
The old white horse.
yeah. Old with the.
I
Okay.
remember riding old Dan.
We
How
heard
come
this.
he had that horse?
Had this pack rat or something was up the attic. You remember? I had the 22 rifle, and you could kind of hear where that pack rat was. You know, making all this noise. I took a shot right through the ceiling, and
You got him?
must have because he didn't.
Ceiling of the house?
Blood started dripping down.
Ugh.
Oh, it didn't. Anyway, that's the last I think of the pack.
But they must have rented those places then.
Doris, how do you expect me to video you?
It's too hot.
Well, see, was you home yet when I?
The
Oh,
girl I used to go to high school with worked as doing housework, and this attorney right across the street from her. His name was Melvin Bellis. They wanted somebody to do their housework, and that's when I got that job in Portland.
What were you
Up
doing
on
when you
Council
met
Crest.
Jerry?
That's what I was doing. And
Where
then
did you meet him?
at Oddfellows Hall, just a couple blocks from where Doris lives
Dance?
now,
Okay.
at a dance. 10 cents a night on Monday nights.
For women.
Well, wasn't it for everybody?
Then you worked in this car wash a little while, didn't you?
Well, later, yeah. After I got tired of doing housework, and I went to a housekeeping room out on about 21st and Hawthorne in an old house. And then I got a job doing washing windows until the man who owned the place wanted to fiddle around, and I didn't know it was worth fiddling around.
This tune, you mean? You fiddled around with tune or
He
something?
wanted a tune-up.
Instead of having these windows
Yeah.
washed.
And then I got a job as a secretary, and and Jerry and I got married,
And then,
and I thought that's all that was. All
Yeah.
there was. You just had to get married and live happily ever after. You lived on College. Remember you and Letha?
I lived on college.
Not very
That's
long.
where Mr. Schick lived.
not very long, maybe
In a big brick apartment house.
about a month.
Yeah.
So then I went over to Vancouver, got a job. I worked down on main street down there. You come off the bridge, Burnside probably.
Was that before the war?
Yes. Looked down, the haircuts was 25 cents. Remember the first week I worked there, I made $15.
Oh my gosh. $15.
And then I heard well, I had a license, you see, for both Oregon and Washington. So I went over to Vancouver and worked for this kid.
Then you went to Hoquiam, didn't you?
Well, how come I went to Hoquiam when I got over my sore chin and sore back, you know, after the episode Fallen Trees. I thought I'd better go back to barber school for a little while. You know, member up. So I went in there and they let you work for free, you know. I think I just maybe a few days, but anyway, while I was in there, here come this old fella, George Gibson, from Hoquiam, and he said that this must have been about June, I suppose. He said, 1st of August, I'm going to need a barber because the barber I got is getting drafted. So he said, I won't need him till the 1st of August. In the meantime, I seen an ad in the paper for they needed a barber over in Vancouver. We went over there and we rented a downstairs apartment and worked for this guy until the 1st of
I
August.
didn't remember that. I didn't remember you doing that.
I was in San Francisco during this time, and I remember first Don would be doing something, Jenny would be doing something.
And we moved to Hoquiam and we paid $17 rent.
Oh.
This guy had bought an old house and fixed it up.
You bought it?
No, this fella where we lived. He bought this old house. Things in Hoquiam were just terrible, I guess, during Depression time. I remember him saying he bought this pretty good house for $1,500, and he made an upstairs apartment for us, and then later we moved downstairs, which was quite a little better, and paid $20. Can you remember Lorraine to come visit?
Yeah, yeah, I do.
Mother bought some, she's going to go down on the dock and do a little fishing, which I think we did. She brought some dough balls that she made up. She heard somehow that they would catch
She
fish.
loved to fish.
You know?
Leaf it in?
No,
Mother.
Oh, Mother.
So we went down on the door or the dock there, and I think we might have caught a fish or two. That's when Dad had this old Chevrolet coupe, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we had that during the war.
You
Yeah,
How did you ride then? Was it 3 in the front seat, Lorraine? Must have been.
must have been. It had a rumble seat though,
Yeah.
didn't it?
But this was a good job because this old fella, he had a little bit of arthritis. And he'd made this barber shop right at the edge of Hoquiam out of an old house too.
Oh, is that right?
And he wouldn't get up. If a customer come in and he was both not busy, why he would just not get up because he didn't want to do any more than he had to. Then every afternoon about 1 o'clock, except Saturdays, he would go across the street to a beer joint and he gambled. Great Pan, whatever Pan is.
I'll be darned.
And leave me in Bearman of the South, so I kind of was making $35, $40 a week.
Gee,
Big
that was
money,
good
you know.
money in those days.
So
That's
you worked,
where you lived when Jerry and I were married.
yeah, you worked there then until war came along.
So when and then this fella, this kid came back from was going to come back, I guess, from his time in the service. Well, what had happened, when he left you there by yourself in the afternoons, why, I turned in all the money that I made, you know. Naturally, you know, you don't want to be dishonest with a nice fellow like him. And he says, I can't figure that out. You're making a lot more money than this other kid. He said,
The other kid wasn't
so he figured
all
he
in.
wasn't turning in all the money, you know.
Yeah.
So when he came back, he said nothing doing. He wasn't going to kept me there. So anyway, when the war started, then
Is that when you went back into the Navy?
I went into. I figured, you know, if I get drafted,
Yeah, they'd put you any place.
I'd be in the Army. Well, here I had my 6 years in the Navy. So I took a bus to Seattle to see what they had. And they had what they call a coastal patrol. That's really what I was going to join. And well, they said, well, come back next week and we'll fix you up. I went back the next week and they said, hey, we got something better for you. CBs.
Well, you went right into the CBs.
So,
right at its inception.
So we were supposed to go into the 1st Battalion, but somehow they had enough. See, I went on as a first-class cook, so they had enough cooks, I guess. So we hung around till from January the 16th was when they swore me in. I was getting paid until 3rd of March.
My God.
You remember me coming back to Vernonia, Lorraine?
Yeah.
Once in a while, and built that garage.
For heaven's sake.
For your car?
For the store, the car. And
Oh yeah.
I helped Dad. That's when I helped him set the foundation on them cedar blocks for that house he built. We were supposed to hang around Seattle because when you got called, they
Just you and
to leave the
Aletha.
state.
At that time, no kids.
And then she went back to her folks, you see, for the, I suppose about the, well, in January, I think.
But wasn't she pregnant with,
Yeah.
thought she was pregnant with Donna.
She must have been.
Well, but then she was pregnant for about
Then they
a
sent me
year.
clear back from Seattle to Providence, Rhode Island. Imagine that, all the way across. We rode the
My God.
Great Northern Train. I thought, boy, that is something, you know. And then 3 weeks there. So then they sent us to a NYA camp, which had something to do with the youth group, I guess. We was there 3 weeks.
Oh my God.
Supposed to getting Marine training,
Ah,
you know. For
that's rough.
they sent this corporal from the Marines, you know, out there to as a drill instructor, you know. And when the boots come into the Marine camp, you know, where they treat them, you know, like scum, you know. He was going to do the same thing there. He didn't get away with it because we had a high rating and he did, you know.
I'll be darned.
He wanted us to salute him and give him a sir and all
Yeah.
that. I remember the first day he said, now you fellas have had some training, which we did have in Rhode Island, you know. So he started out, you know, in the Marines, a little different deal, you know. Bird, her. You know, they don't speak English, you know.
No.
One, left, right, left, you know.
Remember Fort Lewis? I never
Yeah.
could figure that
And
out.
then pretty soon he says, rip ho. What the heck is
What's
rip
rip
ho,
ho?
you know? So we just kept going. What's the matter with you people? Don't you understand the English? You know, when I say rip ho, that means
Stop.
you're supposed to turn around and go the other direction.
Now, did you go to New Caledonia right after your training then?
So then we went, after that, we went to Camp Allen, Virginia to kind of get organized. Then we shipped us out to Fort Hueneme, and that was just
Let's see,
getting
where's
started.
that now?
Oh, California.
That's out of Oxnard.
I remember when you were
That's
there.
spelled Huemene.
Yeah. You remember that, Doris?
So when it was kind of strange when I got back, you know, I was telling the Wrights about Fort Hueneme. Well, I was in Fort Hueneme. You was in a place spelled H-E.
Huey. Hueneme.
You know, we think it was Hueneme.
Oh, yeah.
I was getting the kitchen set up, you know, the galleys they call it, in the Navy, and I looked across the street to see, and here was this fellow working on a telephone, electric lines it was putting them. And I said, that looks like John Allstott. I didn't know that the Allstotts was anywhere near it.
Oh, really? You didn't know they were down there?
So I hollered, hey, John! And he looked up, you know, and went, hello, Don!
I'll be darned.
So we was there 3 weeks, so I went in and seen the Allstotts quite often, and that's that picture I took of Evelyn, you know, she was there.
She was so
Oh,
pretty.
Bob
Yeah.
had gone into the
Is she still
service
pretty?
too.
Yeah.
I don't know how long she stayed with her folks. So then we, after 3 weeks, on June the 8th, 1942, we caught an old Dutch freighter,
Oh,
diesel job. It's a wonder we ever got to New Caledonia.
My God.
They had made this hold into a place for you to live. The bunks was about 6 high, something like that, you know.
You know, we don't
Because-
realize how
the conditions.
the United States weren't ready for war, really, at all.
And this thing was a diesel ship, and the sparks just flew out of the top, you know. There'd have been a
Oh,
submarine within 40 miles. But we were supposed to have our supplies was in a Liberty ship behind us, and they got sunk.
Oh no.
So they let us off on this little island off of New Caledonia called Il Nu. You know, we had a case of tomato juice and a cleaver. That was our supply.
Oh my.
My God.
We had to go to the army and borrow some tents, you know. And,
Oh, for heaven's sake.
and
How many of you?
Well, we were just one company, 250.
That's quite a few people.
We didn't have any way to cook, you know, so there was an old French. See, the New Caledonia was kind of like Australia. It was a political prison island.
Oh.
And here was an old prison up there. It was all fell in, a whole bunch of bricks and stuff. And here was this iron door that was a door for the prison, I guess, because it had hinges on it and everything. And we brought some of the bricks down and made a grill out of that iron door.
Oh, for heaven's sake.
And that's what we cooked on for 6 months.
Oh my gosh.
And then they found another door. It had the rods through it, you know, like a regular prison door, and it's going to make an oven out of that. So they made it all with the bricks on top of this iron door, you know, and it's going to be a good oven and everything. They fired it up. The only thing we could find to burn was wood. So we had to go over on the mainland, take this pontoon barge over to get our wood.
Over on New Caledonia.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How far?
Well, we had to go up in the woods. They had a lot of woods up there, and we'd go up there and cut down trees.
I mean, how far from the island?
Oh, it was about a mile across
Oh.
on this barge.
Were there natives on New Caledonia, like New Guinea?
Yeah, they were Melanesians, which is the blacks. Big blacks with big fuzzy hair.
Were they friendly?
Yes, that's friendly. We had some of them that would come in and help us chop wood, and we'd give them something to eat, you know. And they got them using them on the docks there. And you didn't see much of them. New Caledonia was a pretty fast little town. I mean, Noumea was the name of the town of New Caledonia. And, there's a lot of French people lived there.
French, huh?
And one time we got stuck. We took this old truck up to get this wood, and we got stuck in the woods. It had been raining. We had this big load of wood on me, you know, and over the few miles, well, not too far away, half a mile or so, we could see this farmhouse. And one of the guys we had in our crew that was helping us load wood, he could speak a little French. So he goes over there and talks to this guy, and he brought his oxen over.
Huh?
And I thought, golly sakes, these oxen, how are they going to pull that big truck out of there, you know? But he fastened those oxen on there, and they just kind of got down on their knees, you know, and they just pulled that truck out of there.
Isn't that something?
Didn't the French own that island?
Yeah, it's still a French island. Another thing, there was a French farmer lady that would put on chicken dinners. So we'd get a bunch together and go over and have a chicken dinner. And this one night, this guy was going to take one of the trucks we had as a dump truck. So we get in the back of the truck, you know, and head for this farmhouse to have a chicken dinner. The guy went to go up a hill, and he pushed the wrong lever, and he dumped.
Oh,
The dump went out, and we all fell out the back end.
You all fell.
that must
thing, he
have
wasn't
been
going
quite a
very fast.
picture.
I'll bet that was something you never forgot.
Finally, we got some supplies.
Did you?
We had to make our own. Well, I'm going to talk about that first oven. When this metal got hot, why it got too hot, and it melted, and down went our oven.
Oh no.
So they made another one then with an arch. It was the best oven you've ever seen. A great big oven, probably 10 foot wide and 10 foot deep.
My gosh, you could cook a lot of loaves
Yeah.
of bread in there.
Did you
Fellow
make
made
the
a
bread?
oil burner after a while.
Did you bake the bread?
No, we had bakers was baking it. I just,
What did you do?
He was the boss.
The meat cutter.
they had 2 shifts of cooks, and I was head of one of the shifts of cooks. And finally, the chief we had, he didn't know anything about feeding a group of men like that. He had been his father owned 27 gourmet stores in New York City, and that was supposed to qualify him for being a chief commissary steward.
Oh no.
And
Great.
so he was always asking me, you know, what we should put on the menu and what we had, you know. In fact, I was doing all of it, his work. And he couldn't type, and we had to type up the menu and present it to the head office, you know, to get it approved. And so
What did you have?
he made me, I was the chief to go after supplies, you know.
Steward.
Well, I mean, I was just so first class, but then pretty soon they
Made your chief petty
made me,
officer.
made me chief. I was practically
Yeah, I
doing all of
remember
his
your
work.
uniform.
Yeah.
Looked so pretty in it. Letha was so proud.
Yeah.
What kind of meals did you have?
Lots of spam. But we were pretty good later. They got beef come in from New Zealand, and